So today I'm going to show you a popular method of rendering cars into a backplate. This is a very popular technique in the automotive industry. So we're going to start out with this and end up with this. First, we're just going to hop over to HDR Haven, get any HDR really, but ideally we're going to get one with some backplates with it. So now we're just going to hop into Blender real quick. I'm just going to add a camera. Then I'm going to hop over to Photoshop, open up the raw image. We're going to check the real world values of the lens in the upper right corner. So we're definitely going to take the focal length and the f-stop. So now I'm just going to do a quick color grade so I can save the backdrop so we can add it into Blender. Once it's saved, we're going to hop back into Blender, add the image as a backdrop. Then we're going to match up the resolution of the backdrop also real quick, so the rendering will fit the backdrop in Photoshop later on. So now we're just going to really tweak until the car fits. I just really do this by eye and just tweak until it looks good to me. So now I'm just adding a plane as a reference real quick to match it with the road, and I noticed that it somehow isn't fitting, so I thought maybe the photo was taken with a crop sensor instead of a full frame sensor, so I'm multiplying the 50mm focal length by 1.6, so I got 80mm, but this was even more off, which was very strange, so I just dropped it to 35 since that's also very popular settings. And somehow this matched up. I don't know why, but this definitely was very strange. So I'm gonna add a backdrop now, finally. It's basically just a plane with a wall, and then we're just gonna unwrap this with project from view, and that's pretty much how you do it basically. So now we're just gonna hop in the shader editor real quick. I'm gonna use a emission shader for now, add the backdrop image into the emission shader, and now you can see that the car is sitting on the road in our backdrop image. Now we're going to add the HDR as well, add a mapping node and a coordinates node as usual, so we can rotate the HDR so it fits our backdrop road. So I'm just matching up the roads here so the light is coming from the same direction, the trees are reflecting in the same way. And now I'm going to change the backdrop to a diffuse shader actually instead, so we've got a shadow under the car, so it's a bit easier to see if it looks good. Now I'm just going to tweak again and just move the car around until I find a good spot where it looks nice. Now I'm going to add a plane for the shadow. So what we want in Photoshop is basically a white and black mask. So I'm just going to add a white plane that's only visible in the camera, not in glossy, not in diffuse, not anywhere except the camera. And the backdrop is exactly the opposite. So the backdrop is not visible in the camera, but visible in diffuse and glossy and everywhere else. So I'm just going to render an object ID as well so we can separate the shadow from the car in Photoshop later on. So I'm just going to do a quick render. Once it's finished, we're going to also render out our ID real quick so we can separate the shadow. Just save it anywhere. Once it's done, just drop both into Photoshop, the car, and our mask. And now we're just going to separate. First, we're going to press Ctrl L and make it really white and black and not white and grayish. Then we're just going to drop it over the car. So now we got the shadow separated. We're going to darken it onto the image below. I'm just going to clean up the image real quick. So once it's cleaned up, we're going to redrop in the mask. And now we're going to separate the car. So it's just going to be the same mask, but inverted. So once you got that, you've got a car sitting in your backdrop basically. So now I'm just going to do a lot of color grading. I'm just going to speed through this process. This process is full of tweaking, so this is just going to take a little bit of while. There's no real rules here. I just kind of go for it and I just start tweaking until it looks nice. So after a lot of tweaking, I actually still didn't like it, so I'm actually rendering out a new reflection. So I just made a simple plane instead of the wall and the back as a reflection. So I'm rendering this out real quick. And actually I'm also adding motion blur in this case because somehow it just still was a little bit boring. So I'm just rotating the wheels real quick. Once they're rotating, just do another quick render. Don't forget to turn on motion blur. So this looks a bit nicer. So I'm just going to drop it into Photoshop. So I'm going to do another color grade, of course. Now it's a bit faster since I already kind of know what look I'm going for. So I'm just checking it again, and I do like it more now, so I'm going to keep it with this. Now I'm going to just brighten up the wheels real quick as well. So now it looks good to me. Last thing is blur the backdrop. So I'm just going to delete the car with Shift F5 real quick and use the path blur. Once it's done, we're just going to turn on the car again. And that's pretty much it. I hope you liked seeing how my workflow is and how I go about these things. So it's not the best image I've ever made because I just hopped right into it. I didn't actually practice anything on this tutorial because I thought it's important to see how I deal with unexpected situations. For example, the first color grade was very long and the second color grade was very quick because I already knew what I'm aiming for. So that's pretty much it. I hope it helps you. So yeah, goodbye.